we are live at the moment, and I'm just going to give it a minute to let people kind of like show up in the chat. It's 11 a.m. Normally we shoot around 5:30 p.m., so this is an odd time, and a lot of my audience is actually probably in class right now.
I got to tell you, there was I really enjoyed the discussion underneath the last interview.
Yeah.
I've rarely seen that kind of not only really lively discussion, but really polite. You know, there wasn't a lot of trolling, and you've got a really good group here.
Thank you. I agree. I'm really proud of how my group conducts themselves in public, and how they treat our guests, because I think we've established long ago that like the tone of this show is that like it doesn't quite like whoever we have on, you know, there's no like, well, this isn't what I'm used to, you know. We've kind of been throwing it around for them.
Yeah.
We've thrown them a whole bunch of different types of shows, so they're used to the unexpected. And so
Yeah.
it was nice. I'm just doing a tweet myself. So.
Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. I will try not to watch myself.
All right. Yeah, we're good. Let me get my curtain down. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Elseworlds Exchange. I am Sal, and joining me today, again, is my guest, Brad Guigar, of Webcomics fame, and just an all-around guru of many, many different aspects of this crazy culture that we find ourselves in. Brad, thanks for being on, man.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Like I was saying at the top of the show, I really enjoyed our talk. It's gotten a lot of buzz, and I don't know whether you started something that may be something that you don't want to lay claim to later, but I kind of got the bug, and I've been doing short little 20-minute bursts on webcomics.com.
Nice.
Where I'm talking about some of this stuff, and it's been getting a super response. So,
that's great.
So thank you for kind of giving me the push I needed.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. This is, yeah, let me tell you, when we started doing podcasting on this channel, like, more regularly, especially on a consistent basis, and when the live feature became a thing that was very easy and intrinsic to understand, it was great, and I really, really got addicted to it. So,
yeah.
And it's funny because you can find yourself being like, I have a good chunk of time. I could literally just jump on right now.
Right, and just start talking.
And there'll be an audience there somehow. Like, there'll be people that are waiting for you.
That's amazing. I've got to try that. I may have to get in touch with you later and have you walk me through the ins and outs. But yeah, I was fascinated by how you handled that.
Thank you. Well, it was great having you. You're always an amazing guest, and you always give a great wellspring of information and experience.
Some of them may even be accurate.
I know, yeah, no, and I loved seeing you in the conversation. If you haven't watched it, by the way, check out Brad's appearance on a previous episode of the Elseworlds Exchange where we talk about webcomics and whether they really do need to change or if they are in any danger of stagnation. So check it out; it's a great one. But also, do yourself a favor and go look in the comments, because Brad gives some additional advice and guidance to those who have any additional questions. And it's terrific.
I tried to provide a little guidance, and actually that's going to be an upcoming topic is good promotion.
Oh, yeah.
And useless promotion. And you see so much useless promotion out there that it makes you crazy.
You encounter it in so many things, and of course, like when you first start, I think all of us are guilty of it.
Yeah.
I know that when I was starting YouTube, it was a world of like just trying to get anybody to look at what we were doing.
Yes.
And you went to like avenues and audiences that were never going to watch your stuff or never going to absorb your content. And for some reason they're just you thought to yourself like, well, it's so good that anyone will watch it, you know?
Exactly. Hey, my mom says so. I'm brilliant, you know, and why wouldn't everybody agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the bad thing about all that scattershot kind of marketing is that you end up spending so much time on that you're not spending time on what you should be doing, which is doing a good thing, whether that's a comic or a podcast or whatever, instead of working on getting good, because that's actually the best marketing of all, is doing a good thing.
Right,
whatever thing is.
That's always been your mantra. I know when we were working on comics years ago, I asked you about like what we needed to do, what was our best strategy, and you were like, the best strategy is always just to make the best content because the cream rises to the top. That was always your perspective.
Yeah, it's impossible to hide good content on the web.
Yeah, it's true. Today, however, and not however, we're just talking about...
Speaking of hiding content.
Let's talk about the kind of content that you can't view in a school or at work. Not safe for work content. Brad, you have entered into a whole different spectrum than I'm sure you were expecting to be in, let's say, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
How did you fall into it? And then we'll get into like the pitfalls, possibilities, and promise and perils of not safe for work content.
Well done, Sal. That was fantastic. Well, see, here's the deal, and stop me if I've gone over this before, because I think we might have treaded a little bit of this in the previous show. But the shortened version is quite simple. In 2014, I realized that ad blockers had put a constriction on my revenue that I needed to come up with something different. I had to do something different, or else I was gonna have to, change my avocation. I was gonna have to find a day job.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, just to bring things full circle, today is the 5-year anniversary of me quitting my day job.
Wow.
At the Philadelphia Daily News.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. It's amazing to think that it's been 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was March 28th, 2012 when I made the announcement, today is my last day. And things went it was very interesting getting used to not having a steady paycheck.
Yeah.
But ad revenue came in 2012, hit like on a monthly basis, and I could count on it. By 2014, that had stopped, and it completely constricted to a drip. And I had to do something. I had to come up with something, and luckily, thank God for Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
Patreon was rising just around that time. So I'm looking around at what some people are doing, and what I basically tried to do was find something that my readers were willing to pay for.
Yeah.
And I tried an all-ages strip. They weren't interested. I tried kind of reviving the PG-13 version of Courting Disaster. Weren't taking it. I tried doing digital collections, repackaging, trying this and that, and trying to throw stuff out there. Weren't interested. Bonus cartoons. I tried doing single-panel comics, which was something I always wanted to experiment with, and I thought I'd put some really good stuff out there.
Yeah.
No go. So I looked around, and actually the guy's name, I'll always plug him. He does a comic called Zombie Roomie, and his name is John Wigger. And I was looking at his Patreon, and he was doing great. And I looked, and he was doing once a week, not safe for work version of his comic strip, 4 panels. That handled adult themes and nudity and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so I'd seen John at comic conventions forever and ever, and he's always given me his business card. He was always super. At the time I was thinking about trying to learn Manga Studio. It's called Clip Studio Paint now. Yeah. Horrible name.
Yeah, Manga Studio is easy to understand and really straightforward, but.
Whoever named that freaking software does not have any idea how much bile a artist feels towards the idea of using clip art.
Yeah.
And that word "clip" being the first word in there turns my stomach every time.
I immediately jumped to that conclusion. I was immediately clip art was the first thing I thought of.
Must be clip art. Clip Studio. But anyway, he was always happy to. He goes, if you want to learn it, I can teach you. Blah blah. Super nice guy. So I called him up. I dug through, found his business card. I said, okay, tell me what you're doing, and tell me how you do it. And he gave me a lot of really good advice, including something that I still use today, which is I never call it porn. I never call it even adult comics or comics 3Xs. I always call it NSFW. That has been the most. it sounds a little bit like dog whistle kind of talk, but it's kind of an accepted term. Everybody knows what you're talking about, but you don't use words like porn and stuff, which is a real turnoff to people.
Well,
so
yeah,
he gave me lots of advice.
It gives
Go ahead.
you. I was just gonna say that like using labels that are associated or affiliated with the not safe for work bubble or umbrella kind of hamstring you, because then all of a sudden I think you're ascribing labels that you don't want or that you don't want to be affiliated with, and also it restricts you in a big bad way. You know, it tells people like not safe for work doesn't imply or suggest or mean pornography. So why give yourself why limit yourself in that way?
Well, and really, that to be fair, to be completely honest with you, the where this went, it would be very accurately described as pornography. Right. All right. But it's a little bit more tasteful on social media to say not safe for work.
Yeah.
And I've had I don't think I've had anybody that has come to Patreon and left, clutching their pearls and
just aghast and offended.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of knows what's going on. Believe me, once you see some of the preview images that I've got up, you kind of figure it out real quick.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe you're a little bit naive.
Well, yeah. No, your experience and your craft, you know what images are going to be tasteful yet implicit in the tone.
Right.
I was just thinking about your Evil Ink After Dark cover of Mismatch, where you're like, okay, I know what she normally looks like. And I used, actually, for this cover, I used an old image of her from an original Evil Ink cover.
But she's changed a lot.
there's a significant shift, and I think there's no way you can misunderstand what the content is here. Yeah.
And Alex Heberling, who is my colorist, did an amazing job on that image. That's a killer from start to finish. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's implicitly explicit. Let's put it that way. It gets the job done. And so John kind of walked me through what he was doing and everything, and so I'm like, I'll give this a try. I'm always trying. I always like to be open to experimentation, and it goes back to when I first started doing webcomics in 2000. All of the prevailing professional cartoonists at the time were syndicated people, and what I saw from them was a real resistance to change. They were frightened of change. They were they resist. They didn't like what they were seeing, and they wanted to put the brakes on.
Right.
And I kind of got it into my mind so much that I didn't want to ever be that guy.
Right.
And I always wanted to be open for experimentation and see what happens. That's what I wanted to kind of embrace, even as I got old and crusty. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. And I threw it open to my readers, and I said, hey. Well, and I think I posted one Courting Disaster that was uncensored. And Courting Disaster, for the uninitiated, was a series of cartoons, single-panel cartoons, that I used to do for a newspaper that accompanied a sex advice column. So, of course, it had to be newspaper-friendly. It had to be PG-13 at best.
Yeah.
And so, and Scott Kurtz always kind of teased me that it was the best sex comics with no sex in it that he'd ever seen. So I'm like, okay, here's a Courting Disaster with actual nudity and so forth.
Yeah.
And I had done that, and one 4-panel strip that I just posted as a proof of concept in March of 2015. And my Patreon, which had stagnated at a certain level for 7 months prior, tripled by the end of the month.
That's numbers you can't deny. Like that's the kind of
even I can figure it out when that happens. Even I can be like, oh, I see what's going on here. This is that's become my phrase when I'm talking about Patreon now. I found the thing that my readers were willing to pay for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to success on Patreon. And it doesn't necessarily mean not safe for work stuff, but it does mean finding the thing that your readers are willing to pay for. And I think that's going to be a different thing for every person.
Yeah.
For me, It was Not Safe for Work Comics. And by the next month, I said, well, screw this, doing it once a month shit. Let's do this once a week.
Yeah.
And by the end of that month, that number that had settled in 3 times the previous, that number doubled by the end of that month.
Wow.
So it became a one-upsmanship between myself and my readers. I said, okay, you like that? How about a full page instead of 4 panels? How about we do a full page? They loved it. That turned into stories, which is now what's being collected into the book. That turned into stories that get updated exclusively on Patreon. They've got the exclusive content there. My readers have the first look at all that stuff. No one else can see it. And that turned into that. Courting Disaster, I started doing those more frequently. And then I threw it open to commissioned illustrations, which is going to be the 3rd book that's being kickstarted as this package. I put up a commissions list, and they would purchase commissions at a discounted rate through Patreon, because at the end of the day, I was going to turn around and use that commissioned illustration as more Patreon content to get more people in the tent. Yeah. So it turned into this, every month we were adding something new and adding something new. And by 2016, I had gotten to the point where I was making, on average, 1 exclusive Patreon post a day.
Wow.
For every month. Now, not all of those were Not Safe for Work.
Right.
Some of those were even link stuff and collections and stuff like that. But I stepped up my Patreon game so much that now, and there's very few, I think there's 1 month in there that was an off month. And actually March was tough because we had Emerald City. I saw you out there. Yep. I fell way behind doing that. But we poured it on, and I will be announcing probably in Thursday's blog the numbers. But once again, we'll be able to say that we've had, on average, 1 post a day for March.
Wow. That is hard to conceive of when you consider the original workflow and the original way in which you produced your content. Do you find that you're feeling it? Do you feel like, wow, I didn't expect to have to work this much, or do you find that you're just kind of enjoying it and you're kind of in it and you're just like,
no, I love it. See, here's what happened after doing this. It actually kind of all gelled at the same time, because I've been doing this for 16, 17 years now. Yeah. February would have been the 17th anniversary. Ooh. And I'd been doing a comic strip for 16 of those years. I kind of shifted over in 2016 and started creating my comic as a graphic novel and updating it in half-page bursts. It's very similar to like Table Titans and Drive and so forth. Yeah. And that was a nice challenge, and that felt really good. But what I've actually found is that Not Safe for Work Comics is the biggest challenge, really, that I've had yet. As an all-around challenge. Writing humor is number one. Yeah. Writing humor is the number one challenge. It'll never get boring. It'll never get easy. That's indisputable. Yes, I agree with that. But what I found for me is a close second is doing adult comics, because it's the whole package. It's the whole enchilada. You've not only got to be able to draw really well, because as I found out, very quickly, if you're not good at anatomy, and you got 2 people and things aren't lining up, those scenes don't make any sense. Right. So I had to up my anatomy game really quick. I had to become a much better artist than I was before. And the same old combinations get very boring very quickly when you're talking about concepts and the writing. Penis, vagina, 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 penis, penis. There you go. Yeah. You've got to find something interesting to do with that, or it's going to get boring really quickly. Well, so as a writer, that became a real challenge.
Yeah. Do you find that you have to compete directly with that larger market. I use my own example just to kind of, because I'm an expert in my own examples. Thinking about how, like, when you make content that is very specifically geared towards a niche, right? You are competing with your niche. But when you find that you're making content that, while it is geared towards your niche, you're not making the kind of content that is directly competing with your perceived peers. You find yourself in a larger pool and competing with those who you didn't think you were competing with. I'm really roundabout getting to. Do you find yourself competing / jockeying for attention / readers and viewers and eyes with the larger NSFW community as opposed to with your own comic peers?
That's a great question. I've got two answers for you. There's two things that immediately come to mind.
Okay.
Number one, am I competing with Pornhub?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but this may have changed, but last year they released one of those, and they've been doing this a lot. What were the top search engine search strings that got put into Pornhub? Adult cartoons was number one in one of their categories, or for one of their strata.
Yeah.
Adult cartoons is one of the things that's being looked at. So I'd like to think that Pornhub is competing with me.
Yeah.
Although I think if we traded paychecks, I think it might be they'd come up a little bit on top. But do I think that I'm competing with them? No, I don't think I'm competing with them at all. If there's any competition to be had, it's like internal. It's like I see other people who do adult comics, and I kind of I want to try and do this as good as they do.
Okay.
Phil Folio, number one. For me, he's the gold standard. His series called Xenophile with 3 X's. You can still find it, and fantastic sci-fi smut. Absolutely fabulous stuff, and just playful, happy sex.
Right. It's not.
The way he did it was really there was a joy behind his writing. I try to channel that as much as I can. My readers will let you know if I'm being successful or not, but it's a constant challenge. Spike Troutman, right, from Iron Circus Comics.
Oh, yeah.
She's doing phenomenal things. I actually got a chance to walk up to her and tell her to her face that I think that she's amazing, that she's doing the things that she's done with adult comics has been really inspiring. And the list in fact, I'm following some of these guys on Twitter and stuff, and their work kind of inspires me in different ways. There's a whole lot of people that I'm not really competing with, but I mentally use them to set the bar.
Right on. That's great.
Now, here's the second answer.
Okay.
And it's weird because it hit me just the other day. The National Cartoonist Society came out with their list of top 5, mainly syndicated. I think all 5 of them are syndicated.
Of course.
Syndicated cartoonists that are up for the Cartoonist of the Year award.
Okay.
You may not know it if you don't know me well. I'm kind of competitive, and I'll be honest with you. I'll bare my soul. Every time the Eisners are announced, the Harveys are announced, the Cartoonist of the Year, there's a little part of me, that's like, God damn it, they missed me again. There's always that, and I'll admit to that.
Yeah.
I have that inside of me. It's like, doggone it. How come I'm not on that list?
Yeah, I hear that.
And to be honest with you, the one time I made the list for the Eisners, my first thought was it was for Fables, which is Phables, and who was it? Bill Willingham's comic Fables, Fables. I was convinced that they had just chosen the wrong
They just picked the wrong book.
Got like a misspelling, so I couldn't even let myself have that. But here's the thing. I am free. What I realized just the other day is I'm freed from that, because I kind of know that I'm doing the kind of comics that is very good for putting food on the table, very good for running a successful Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But this is not the kind of work that is ever going to get an award.
No, that's fair.
I'm not going to get an award for this stuff. I realized that I made peace with it long before that it had become conscious. Because I saw that list, and I'm like, yeah, these guys are all really good, and I didn't have that initial rush of jealousy, because I'm like, nah, you know what, the thing I'm doing now, it's great, and I love it. I don't think that sex is something that we should be ashamed of. I think doing a sex comic is every bit as valid as doing a comic about that has blood and guts and violence.
Yeah.
In fact, to be honest with you, I kind of like the choice I made. My people make each other feel very much better than people in a blood and guts kind of comic.
True.
So no, I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of. But let's face it, we know. We know the reality is that this is never going to be award-winning stuff. I'm not going to be up there accepting the Eisner Award for Evil Inc. After Dark, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean...
That might be an awkward speech to give anyway.
Sure. I've noticed that you... do you feel that you've kind of been setting the trend, or do you feel like you've kind of just been... like, you are acknowledging the future? I've seen that a couple of your peers have also kind of followed suit with this idea of taking their originally not safe for work comic and then giving people an alternative version of their property. I'm thinking of Short Pact, for example, does that. Do you take that as an indication of things to come, or do you think that's more just like, well, yeah, stupid, look at how good we're doing here?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think Short Pact was on the train before I was.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to say that. It's hard for me to really say. Because okay, I'll liken it to this. If you've ever been car shopping and all of a sudden you decide, you know what I kind of want is a Mazda 5, and then you're driving the next day and all you see on the road is Mazda 5s.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. I really didn't give this kind of work a whole lot of attention before. I mean, I knew what like Josh Lesnick was doing with Orgy Mania because I had roots that go back to with him back to Keen Spot in early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I was familiar with what he was doing. But it wasn't something that was really on my radar. And now that I'm doing it, and my ears are kind of to the ground on this, I'm seeing it happen a lot.
Yeah.
Is that a cause and effect? I don't know. I think it's kind of that I'm going to buy a car phenomenon.
Gotcha. I have a question regarding Patreon. Because we have a Patreon as well, and it's not necessarily related, but it's tangentially related, only because Patreon was the impetus behind it. Patreon is it is the Kickstarter of itself that kind of like made this whole thing happen. As a online business person, how much we make has always been a closely regarded secret. It's something that we really don't like to showcase or talk about. It's something that as Americans we really kind of keep very close to the chest. Patreon does not care about that at all, and they are completely open with how much you are making, and it's right there on the front page.
It's kind of like it's not unlike comparing measurements.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So when that when you realized that was a thing you couldn't make go away, how reticent were you to the idea of Patreon, and how quickly did you get over it?
Well, two things. Number one, I'm happy to announce that Patreon has since made it possible for you to hide your measurements.
Yeah, but now if you do hide your measurements, now it looks bad.
Right. Yeah, it does. It does. I was wondering whether I was the only person that felt that way, but yeah, I'm always a little suspicious. So here's the deal. My words to you are embrace it, okay?
Yeah.
Because what I found out very quickly is that I used that number, that public-facing number, as a promotion point. That's a marketing point for me. And much like Kickstarter, when I was starting out, I would do social media announcements that would say stuff like, hey, we're getting close to 2,000, we're getting close to 2,500, where I would start milestoning that thing.
Yeah.
And what started to happen, I found out, and it's very palpable, once you start to get up to 1,000, 2,000, and so forth, what happens is that nothing succeeds like success kind of thing. The higher that number goes, that is a testament to the quality of the stuff that's inside.
Yeah.
People are much more likely to sign on to a $1,000 Patreon than they are a $25 Patreon.
It's true.
So I use that number. I keep that number public for the very sheer reason that it's good marketing. It speaks to the fact that a lot of people have seen this. They've stayed with it month after month. Some of them, and here's something that we also need to talk about, because I want my Patreon backers to hear this as well, and yours. Some of them come and go and come back, right?
Yeah.
The big mistake I see a lot of people making with Patreon is that they expect that patronage to be a constant, that someone's going to sign up and they're going to stay. And that doesn't happen that way. You know from your own life, you don't
it's true.
You handle subscriptions that way. So I'd expect your patrons to.
Yeah.
I want my patrons to feel free to jump out when they want to, and know that I'm always happy to see them coming back when they come back. That's all part of the deal. Yeah. I don't get upset when I see them go, and I am thrilled to announce that because I check that. I'm a little bit obsessive. I check this stuff every day.
Yeah. I
have a very good rate of seeing those people come back after a couple months, time and time again, and I think that is a universal with Patreon. I think you're going to see the same thing when people leave. Sorry to see you leave, but I'm also going to be happy to see you come back.
It's true. I mean, and most of the time, at least in my experience, the folk that leave usually leave because they're like, money got tight, like, I have to do this one thing.
Oh.
Like we're saving up for this, or I've got to, it's never like I am dissatisfied with your content. Like, I am unhappy with the rewards. But
it's true in general. I mean, it's like any other relationship. This falls directly under. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at your patron exit surveys, you'll see that holds out. Every now and again, you see somebody who maybe had expectations that you didn't meet for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Maybe they were realistic expectations, maybe they weren't, but expectations weren't met. All right, well, that's something you got to learn from and try to improve in some way in the future.
Yeah.
But 9 chances out of 10, it's about the patron. It's not about you.
Fair enough.
So don't feel bad, Sal.
All right. No, I'm very curious about this whole world because I was really reticent to join Patreon because, on one hand, it meant more production out of us, and on the other hand, it also was like, for me, when it first came on the scene, and this is not too long ago, but still long enough ago where it feels like I'm a fuddy-duddy for complaining about it, or for being suspicious of it. It was, who is going to, or how audacious of me to expect my viewers to pay for my content. Which feels like, and that's why we're here, it feels like the old model of webcomics, where it's like, well, yeah, I have to give away my most, well-regarded property that I put lots of time, effort, and energy and talent into, and I have to give it away for free, otherwise they won't come.
Right. It's an amazing sea change that happened right around, I placed it around 2013, 2014. Yeah. But I'll go even further back than that. I tell this story quite often. In 2010, I took webcomics.com from a free site to a subscription site.
Yeah.
All right. And the subscription was broke down to about $2.50 a month. people were furious. People were like up in arms, ready to kill.
Yeah.
And that was a tough storm that I kind of weathered.
Yeah.
And all because I was asking a subscription for this thing that I was putting a significant amount of time in.
Yeah.
What happened between then and now? Amazon, Apple, and a couple other significant players made it cool to pay small amounts of money for things.
Yeah.
Right? The iTunes store gave you those 99-cent MP3s. Amazon, Christ, one-click shopping. You don't even bother to put your credit card in.
Oh.
Back in the day when we started, the idea of getting somebody to put their credit card number into your website was like, are you kidding me? Well, you might as well just, I might as well just drive my bank account over to your house and dump it in.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Now we're so used to it. Think about all the things that you've number one, not only bought online, but all the subscriptions that you have that you handle online.
Yeah.
Whether it's Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, beep, bop, beep.
Oh, it's just, it makes sense. It makes complete sense. It's just giving people the convenience and the accessibility is key.
Yeah.
Like,
and now that we've come around from those web cartoonists that wrote in and pissed off the syndicated cartoonists and it's like, oh no, old man, this is how we're doing things now. Now we've kind of come full circle. Now we're the ones that are kind of resisting becoming paying, doing that pay model because we're so used to this other thing. But that's where the internet has led us. Without a doubt, that's where the internet is leading to more and more paid content. Look at the number of things that you pay for already. This is just going to be one more thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as getting back to topic on Not Safe Work and Not Safe Work comics in general, I've found, and when I say I found, I mean I have a couple peers who have dabbled in that world, even as far back as I'd say 2005, 2006. A friend of mine who was a very talented artist, or at least he was on the cusp of becoming a very talented artist. He was very talented, and he was honing his skills and working very hard. He found himself in a position where he was like, I want to do cartooning as a business, and Marvel and DC aren't paying me to do it, so I'll have to do this for now until they notice me, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And he was drawing, and so he threw out I think it was on DeviantArt, and he was like, I'll do commissions. And he found that the most consistent commissions that he was getting were not safe work content.
Of course. And
at first he was like frustrated and kind of annoyed at that idea, and he was like, well, when are the real commissioners gonna show up?
Yeah, when's the real stuff? When am I gonna be painting the Mona Lisa?
Exactly. Over? And then, first of all, I think he eventually dropped that mentality because you could not deny the money.
Right.
And it was funny to say, like, okay, so and I think the bread and butter, I think it's been long enough, there's been enough time where I can describe what the things that people were asking him to draw were. But it was like female characters, like female anthropomorphic characters that were laying eggs. It had to be that. And it had to be that very specific thing. And I'm like, dude, that means that you had one person who has just needed to see these things in many different varieties. And but it's funny that, like, that gave me an insight into a whole world that I had no understanding of and had no real experience interacting with or considering. Yeah. And it was the fact that, like, there is an audience out there that wants to see a specific type of content, and they are starving for it.
Right.
And if they can find someone who will do it on a level that is of professional quality, that will allow it to exist in a world that is as good as their mental projection of it, they will pay through the nose to have it.
Absolutely. And if you can become that guy or that woman, you can do well. I've got to be honest with you. I've been very lucky. Well, I don't want to say lucky because I don't think that there's any. I don't want to shame someone that's got like the egg fetish.
No, exactly.
Do your thing. I'm cool with it. But I will say this: the commission requests I've gotten have all been very creative, have all been very interesting. I haven't gotten anything that's that far afield at this point, and it's very interesting to note that there is one theme that I do see quite often, and it's the giant theme,
Yes.
or the opposite of that, the miniature. So one of the characters either turns into a giant or gets shrunk down to miniature size. I've seen those requests come, and to be honest with you, those are kind of fun to draw. Those are a unique perspective challenge, always a unique anatomy challenge. So those are I'm happy to do those all day long.
Yeah.
But now here's my question for you.
Okay.
Your friend, did he work on DeviantArt under his own name, or did he use a nom de plume?
Yes, he used a pseudonym or a nom de plume. Yes. Oh no,
See, that's
no question. He used an alias.
Yeah, well, see, that's kind of interesting because I mean, everybody's got to make their own decision on that.
Yeah.
But that was the decision that I had to make very early. Was okay. Am I going to use my name on this, or am I going to use a pseudonym?
Yeah.
And it was obvious I had to use my own name for a number of reasons. I mean, there's no way I could do the Link After Dark and put it under the title of
Somebody else, like it's going to be...
Yeah, Uncle John Smith.
Yeah, well, first of all, you have a very distinctive style. I think that if anybody was drawing, Mismatch or whatever, doing something illicit, it's like, Brad, we know it's you.
You can come out from behind the thick glasses, the trench coat.
Who do you think you're fooling here, man? Like, what are we doing?
But on the other hand, I don't know. Everybody's got to do their thing. I get that, but I am. Let me put it to you this way: I am thrilled when I see more and more people doing not safe for work stuff under their own name.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't think that this is something that anybody should be ashamed of. I reject the shame that is implicit in sex and sexuality, and I think that it's something, and I don't think it's the career breaker or the career ender that it might have been back in the day.
Oh yeah.
It's a matter of fact, one of these books back here, Secret Identity. Look it up on Amazon. It's right there. Joe Simon, the creator of Superman, did some fantastic erotica back in the day. Now, in his day, you had to work under a pseudonym.
Oh,
and of
yeah.
course he did. But yeah, he did amazing stuff. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I said Joe Simon. I knew I was getting that wrong. Joe Shuster.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, Simon and Schuster, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Somehow I did that, but yeah, he did some fantastic erotica, very heavy BDSM stuff. The guy was great. But in his day, yeah, you had to use a pseudonym because that was I mean, that's why we've got Stan Lee working in comics itself. You had to use a pseudonym.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy when I look around now and I see more and more people kind of owning it and saying, yeah, this is what I do.
It's all about access and the fact that if Schuster wanted to draw erotica and he was unafraid and unashamed of his work, it would have hurt his career, just unquestionably.
Right.
And if even if like let's say 2002, if Mike Krahulik or Scott Kurtz wanted to draw erotic versions of their characters, I don't think it would have been right, but I think it would have hurt their careers. Because it was just they were trying to get in, and like they were trying to get acceptability, and they were fighting. It was like we have enough to worry about. We have enough uphill battles to fight. Let's not also champion erotic fiction, please. Like let's start here. Let's start with
let's take a look at what else would have happened in 2002. Excuse me. They would have been bounced off of every advertising network.
That's right.
And since the name of the game was advertising back then, they would have shot themselves in the foot.
Now, the only way they could have made any money is through private commissions.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
yeah, and it would have
And there
been...
wouldn't have been enough of those. And we were not at the point to, where Patreon and Kickstarter were going to revolutionize this thing that we do.
No.
So, yeah, it would have been, although I do have to tell you, I spent a good amount of time in Seattle telling Scott that he really ought to consider PvP After Dark.
Oh, my God.
But I don't think he's going to do it
don't think
anytime
he's
soon. But the other neat thing was his business manager, Corey Cassoni, did a couple walks around the floor, and we're hanging out after the show one night, and he says, "I'll tell you this, Brad. One thing I definitely noticed is that you're way ahead of the curve." I go, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he says, "There's more and more people doing what you're doing and putting their name on it, and just putting it out there.
Yeah.
And this is quickly becoming a trend."
That's got to make you feel good.
Yeah, well, I take complete, absolute credit for it.
Yeah. Ah, man, it's an interesting and fascinating, yet also difficult to discuss world, because it's hard to say, like, okay, hey, let's talk about erotic comics and how that's working out for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, and yet, it's a fascinating world, and
Well, let me tell you this. Tara, your co-host, right?
Oh, Tiffany.
Tiffany. Oh, God. Edit that out so I don't look like an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys came up to my table last year. We were at some convention or something.
Yeah.
You go, "Hey, Brad, what's going on?" And I go, "I'll tell you what's going on. Patreon is going on." And I start to, and I'm starting to explain, I think for the first time, what I was doing with Not Safe for Work Comics.
Yeah.
And I kept looking over at her to wait to see if her expression was going to change.
Right. Oh, yeah, because
and I think the more I looked at her, the more I was making her feel uncomfortable, because here's this guy who his eyes keep darting over at me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's one of those topics that it's very delicate to start talking about it, and you never know who's going to be like, "Oh man, that's really cool," or who's going to say, "You know what? That's not for me," and
right.
and now I feel icky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember distinctly talking to you and Tiffany, and kind of watching to see if her reaction was going to change.
Yeah.
And true to her good nature, if she did disapprove, she certainly didn't show it.
Well, that's great. Yeah. No, she understands in a big bad way, like, what the winds of change,
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, right on. Like, what you're doing is, respectable and a natural, I think, progression from where we were to where we're going.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, take a look at easily the last 5 years of Evil Inc. I kept going up to the line and up to the line and up to the line, and there to the extent of not only cleavage, but sometimes the hand bra shot, stuff like that. It had been jokingly enough, I said to one of my readers, it's been pretty much 16 years of foreplay. It's time to go to the next step.
That's fair.
Because I had been going right up to the line as much as I could allow myself, especially back when the comic was carried in newspapers.
Yeah.
But then when I finally let that die, then I not only have I allowed myself to go further, obviously on Patreon, but if you read the Evil Inc. public strip now, it's much more typical for you to hear a completely different language, a completely different sensibility, because I don't think that was reflecting my readers' sensibilities at the time.
Yeah.
That G-rated newspaper stuff. My readers are much more open to me dropping a couple of words like an asshole here or a shit there. If it fits the moment. And again, now for those longtime listeners of Webcomics Weekly, what did we always tell you? Never use those words because you want to cast a wide net. And that's because that was all based on advertising. Now that the world is shifted, it's a whole different ballgame. I feel completely comfortable dropping a little bit of foul language or going into situations that I would have never, even for the public strip, situations I would have never touched, because this is a whole different thing we're doing now.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've noticed, because I'm really, really happy that for comics, for you specifically, that the world has changed, or the climate has changed to the point where it went from, we have to make this content that is going to be accepted by our perceived betters, right? And we have to hamstring ourselves and not embrace the openness of the format, because it's for everybody. There's no censor, there's no editor. I can make whatever I want for whomever I choose, and yet I will pigeonhole myself to some degree to make content that I think would appeal to the authority.
Yeah.
And now we're in a world where I could always have done that, but now I can actually monetize that.
Now you can do that without the negative consequences.
Exactly.
In fact, there's positive consequences for doing that now.
Yeah. I found that, interestingly enough, with a couple of other mediums, particularly the one that I'm in right now, that in the beginning, the openness was something to be shared, explored, and celebrated. Mm-hmm. And yet, the more the further along we get, the more, if you expressed that freedom, the fewer opportunities are available to you now. Yeah. Because people are like, well, I can't sell this. I can't monetize that. I can't advertise.
How do you expect us to get a sponsor now?
Exactly. I can't sponsor that. I mean, you're literally making shows that appeal to a very specific niche that television is incapable of reaching, and yet I can't get a sponsor in there because you say the F word in it, you know. Right. But now we're here, and it's like, but that's the whole point. The whole point of this format was to explore and to express yourself and to try new things. But we're finding that, like, if we had done that in the beginning, we'd probably be doing a lot better.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, that's an interesting thought experiment. One thing is for sure, right now is kind of the culmination of a lot of great things for independent artists in general, whether you do music or whatever. Right. We've not only has the delivery system become, robust. But I mean, look at us. We're doing a live show right now on YouTube, right? It doesn't get better than that, technologically speaking. It's true. And monetization has never been more robust. We really are kind of living in a great time. That's when I get really nervous when I hear things about net neutrality and stuff like that, because what we've built over the last 17 years is so perfect and so fragile that I really don't want anybody fucking it up.
That's true. No, I completely agree with you, man, because every time that they talk about throttling or data breaches and just wrecking the whole system, I'm like, you are in direct contrast to progress. Like, we are trying to develop a whole... People make a living here, you know. It's like it's like whenever I argue with our cable provider, with our, like, my job. I left teaching to do this, and I do this every day, and we have multiple live shows. We have this one. We have another one that I do with my other colleagues, and it's regularly scheduled, and it's a thing we do, and it's a show that brings in a lot of readers, or a lot of viewers, and a lot of content, a lot of new potential audience. When the internet doesn't work properly, when we get a spike or a drop, and you can't afford to have that anymore. And but the people who run it don't understand that, like, people make their living off of this. This is where you call your cable provider and you're like, hey, I can't have outages anymore. And they're like, well, it's okay. Like, it's just going to be like a 30-minute thing. I'm like, 30 minutes is my show, man.
30 minutes is a lifetime, especially if you've got a schedule.
Yeah, but it's the most frustrating thing is when people who don't understand your business interfere with it.
Right. It's bad enough. I mean, believe me, it took me... I left the day job in 2012, so it took me 12 years to get to a point where I could truly call myself a cartoonist. Yeah. And then after that, it's so hard to explain to people what you do for a living, and that somebody could actually make a living doing this thing that you do. And it's more dicey now than it ever was.
Yeah.
But it's even more difficult when the person you're explaining it to is the cable company.
Yeah. Oh God. That's the biggest mess. Yeah. But there you have it, man. Any other thoughts and addendums you wanted to make to the topic at hand before we wrap up?
I like I said, I think this is a great time to experiment with stuff like that, and that's what I'd really want to underline is that especially if you're an artist and you're looking at this and you're like, what should I do? I don't think that it's necessarily NSFW work, but at the same time, I wouldn't let things like shame and being timid, or not being confident to make you stop. I think you should try it at least for yourself and see where that takes you. It might just like for me, this opened up an entire avenue that I had never even considered before.
Yeah.
And also as a reader, as someone who is a consumer of this kind of stuff, man, it's all like the DeviantArt example. Believe me, there is a cartoonist out there. There's a creator out there right now working in your niche. If you think that you're weird, I got news for you. You're not. Right? You can find somebody doing your thing. That's the beauty of the web. And if this is your starter's pistol, then go out there and find that stuff because it's out there. You know, and then when you do find it, support that guy, support that woman, support that creator that is doing that thing, because that's the only way to make sure it sticks around.
And I think that is the future of niche content, is direct support for your artist. Absolutely,
and maybe in a certain way it always was. But this is, if you compare just the numbers, just to go a little bit deep baseball with you for a second. On an ad rate, ads were sold on a CPM basis, cost per thousand. The M is a Roman numeral M. Everybody thinks it stands for millions.
Right.
But if you got $1.50 or $2 CPM, you were out dancing in the street. So one reader reading through my entire archive at once maybe generated me $3, $4, $5 tops if they read everything that I had done. I think I've done, like, between Greystone and Evil Inc. and throw in some Courting Disaster, I've done 5,000.
Sure.
They generate very little. Now, obviously, not every one of my readers becomes a Patreon backer, but you can see even the $1 a month Patreon backers are not only generating so much more income for me than I had under the ad system, but it starts to become an exponential growth once you start $5 and $10 and even $20 a month backers. That for me, this has become a far superior revenue generator than advertising ever was.
Sorry, it's funny that I was just thinking about how the individual creator support system that we live in today, and how it's just a direct translation of fandom in general, and how I think of here an example where it was all like you're building off your comment where it's always been there. There's some who there are movie directors or cartoonists or artists or musicians who make something, and the fans come and they patronize that service, and the artist maybe only gets a certain percentage of that patronage. Right. And yet, you see how fans will follow that creator throughout their career. And now we're at a point where the fan is just saying, it doesn't matter what you make at this point. I just want you to have I just want you to keep making, keep existing because of something you've done in your vast career. And so they just provide it, and it's fascinating to see, because it's something it betrays an inherent goodness in humanity that I didn't think was really there.
Well, I don't want to disagree with you, but I think those people do exist. but I would caution you against.
Oh, I wouldn't make a business model after it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because I think, and again, I see people making a mistake on Patreon, treating it like a tip jar. I think people still expect good quality stuff when they become your patron.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is an element of that where somebody says, you know what? I've been reading you for 100 years now. I'll become a $1 patron just because, number one, they kind of reason they're not even going to feel it leaving their bank account.
True.
Right? A dollar, that's almost like another user fee that your bank would instill on you.
Yeah.
Except this way you get a good feeling instead of a bad one.
Yeah.
But you know that those people do exist. But I think that the name at the end of the day, it's always been, as it has been, and always will be, good quality content.
That's the name of the game, folks. Well, Brad, thank you so much for being on this episode of Elseworlds Exchange.
Sure.
We talked about not safe for work content, and yet I think we had a very safe for work conversation.
Well, I hope we did. I was very careful. I didn't want to. We started out this show, and I said, "Yeah, Sal, this thing has a lot of ins and outs." And I thought to myself,
"Oh no,
okay, I got to make sure that I don't say stuff like that."
Don't jump on that. No, I mean, yeah. Well, as long as we continue to maintain our sensibility and our sense of humor, those kinds of jokes are always welcome on here.
Oh, good.
But guys, check out the description box below this video to go visit Brad Guigar's Kickstarter that's happening right now for the next 3 days.
That's right,
Support
3 days, and we are very close to everybody who orders an Evil Ink After Dark book getting automatically upgraded to a hardcover.
Oh.
So that's really super exciting. I've always wanted to do a hardcover, so I'm hoping we hit that mark.
That's exciting, man. Well, check it out, and of course, check out everything that this great gentleman makes.
Everything.
Go to Guigar.com to find everything, but check the description directly to check out that Kickstarter. And we'll see you guys later. This is a bonus episode of Elseworlds Exchange, so we'll see you later today on Tuesday, around 5:30, 6 o'clock for the weekly poll, and of course on Wednesday for another episode of the Elseworlds Exchange. So long, everybody.
Thank you, Sal.
Thank you.